domain. And my name is Zani. I am Burmese and of Buddhist faith. I'm from Burma. Came from 3 generations of military family. The military that is credibly accused of committing gravest crimes in international law. Genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Not only against the Rohingya Muslim people, but in other ethnic communities in Shan and Kachin states. And this is not an opinion. This is part of the official findings by the United Nations mandated fact-finding mission that was made public on 18th of September last year in Geneva. And we want to thank the 2 right honorable gentlemen, MEP Wajid Khan and MEP Jose Faria. And also we want to welcome the Ambassador Jahan from the Republic of Bangladesh for taking the time to come. And I won't go over the program, but I want to make a few preliminary remarks in the next 5 minutes or so, and I will hand it over to the Honorable Mr. Khan. I'm here not only as an activist or a scholar that looks into atrocity crimes, but I'm here as a Buddhist and a Burmese. And first and foremost, I want to say that I take this my individual responsibility as a Burmese, a Buddhist, and a representative of a society that is committing these heinous crimes. And I take my responsibility seriously, partially because I know for a fact the genocidal intent of the Burmese military, of which I was a military cadet at the age of 16 back in 1979, 1980. And more personally, one of my great uncles who passed away 2 years ago in Rangoon, the old capital of Burma, was the deputy commander in charge of Rakhine State, the crime side. But when he was there, it was when the military of our country treated the Rohingyas as full and equal citizens, as well as an ethnic minority integral to the Union of Burma. This was back in 1961. So we have a case where the state has turned against its own people. And the Rohingyas are not stateless, but they are the subject of a state that turned genocidal. And genocide is, of course, is an interpretation of international law that came into effect in 1949 January. As you know, genocide isn't simply about how many people were killed, not the size of the people that were destroyed or killed. Genocide, if you look at Srebrenica, only about 8,000 people were killed. That was considered an act of genocide internationally. And in the case of Cambodia, we have a top defense counsel for one of the senior leaders of Cambodia at the time of the genocide. And she can tell you that even 40 plus years after the crimes were committed, still the arms of international law have reached the old perpetrators. They're in their late 80s and 90s. And also, one comment I wish to make is that I study with a US military officer who became one of the interrogators of German SS officers right after the Second World War. He was posted as a military intelligence officer in Berlin. He was one of my 3 thesis advisors. So I developed a sensitivity to this issue, racism and how racism, it doesn't matter whether white nationalism or Buddhist nationalism or Muslim fundamentalism or Christian colonialism. What matters is these racisms that are everyday practices that we pass on to our children. When the state begins to mobilize everyday prejudices, it can end in a place like Auschwitz. We do not have Auschwitz in Burma. We do not have gas chambers. We do not have trains. We do not have rail stations, and we do not have, the systematically built concentration camps. But none of that means we in Burma today are not committing genocide. And rather shockingly, we were at the German Foreign Office in Berlin, not long ago, just before Christmas, and the German Foreign Office official in charge of Southeast Asia blatantly denied that such level of racism exists in Burma, whereas in fact, I who can think and act like a racist at the level of Nazi racism was telling her, I know my people, I know my society, I speak the language. We are turning Nazi, we are turning fascist. Yeah? I don't feel proud to say that we are turning fascist, but as a scholar, as a human, I feel I have the responsibility as an individual to say that my society is committing these crimes. So I'm here in the middle of Europe. This is the home of both the concept of genocide. Yeah. Raphael Lemkin was a Polish Jewish the legal activist and a legal mind who coined the word in 1942 in Madrid. The genocide that became the foundation of today's Genocide Convention. And today, European Union is failing to make the slogan, never again, a reality. When I first met Mr. Wajid Khan, we had a little cup of coffee downstairs. I took little, little badge. I gave it to him. Look, you are a Muslim, I am Buddhist. I don't carry Buddha image. I don't carry any locket with the Buddha symbol. I carry this. This is from Dhaka. Yeah? I picked this up, a couple of these things, because I wanted to give them as gifts to my daughters and a few other friends. I took it off. I gave it to him. I said, brother, wear this. I am Buddhist. I don't wear Buddha image. I wear never again because I take it seriously. Because to me, it doesn't matter what faith, race you belong to. What the highest symbol, the highest entity for me as a fellow human is other people's humanity. Yeah? And I am not suffering. I'm not in refugee camp. I come here in like a suit and tie. I'm not subject to anything that we will call oppression, not even remotely. But I can feel it. I have the compassion. And compassion is not limited to Buddhists. Every one of us can feel compassion if every one of us can feel hatred. Yeah? It's the opposite of the, hatred. And so Europe, let me say this categorically, European Union is treating genocide, an international crime, an act of violation of an interstate treaty called Genocide Convention, as if it were an afterthought, as if it were a humanitarian issue. It's not enough to feed the Rohingyas. It's not enough to send money for schooling. It's not enough to send medicine. Yeah? We need to address the roots of the problem. The problem is 4 decades of persecution that has reached a full-fledged textbook example of genocide. And European Union will have blood on its hand if it walks away from this crime. It is happening right before our eyes. And finally, the fact-finding mission on 24th of October last year briefed the Security Council. Marzuki Darusman, former Attorney General, former High Commissioner of National Human Rights Commission, and former Special Rapporteur on North Korea and head of the fact-finding mission, told the Security Council unequivocally that this is genocide. And just last month at Columbia University in New York, Radhika Kumaraswamy, another fact-finding mission member and a legal scholar, she said she actually singled out Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International for ignoring the evidence and not calling the crime by its very name, genocide. She said, what else could this be? This is genocide. And she said she's an extremely experienced legal mind investigator. She said this genocide has shaken her to her core. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Mr. Wajid Khan and Mr. Faria. Thank you.
Dr. Zani, first of all, thank you very much for your very passionate introduction and very blunt, straight down the middle message. You're renowned for not mincing your words, and you've got your feelings of your heart very well expressed and articulated there. And can I just say thank you very much and congratulations on your book, which I will take as one of the most important gifts I've had for a long while, because it talks about the pain of people and the suffering of people, and we should never, as you have the badge and I have that in my office, we should never forget history and what's happened in terms of human suffering. Also great to see my good friend Nesan Lewin and also Tun Khin here, and everybody here. Welcome to the European Parliament, and of course Ambassador to the European Union. And let me start off with OIC. Because I have just come back today from Geneva, and where I was absolutely talking about the situation in Myanmar, and I was delighted to see that OIC and the European Union have worked on a joint resolution specifically on Myanmar, which will be in the Human Rights Council. So I know, Madam Ambassador, you've done a great deal of work and effort here in the European Parliament and also within OIC, and that is a really good example where the European Union is working with OIC to look at a particular issue, and that is a positive step we should welcome, and let's see how that is impacted. And from the United Nations is seeing this, there's a resolution on this sponsored by EU and OIC. Let me also say a huge thank you to my friend whom I'm reunited with, Mr. Jose Faria, MEP, who has been a staunch advocate of raising the plight for the Rohingya community and all the ethnic minorities across Myanmar. I have been one of those people that have been to Cox's Bazar, who've had the difficult conversations and painful observations of seeing people suffer. And I've learnt a lot from that. And I'll tell you now, to everybody in the room and all viewers, I'm proud to be sitting with Mr. Faria, because together we have hosted numerous conferences, signed many letters to Madam Mogherini to put pressure on the Commission. And there is frustration. I felt the frustration, but I want to talk a bit about what the EU has done and what it should be doing as well. But let's not forget, the EU has different branches: the Parliament, we have the Commission, and we have the Council. But rest assured, from the Parliament point of view, I think if we just look at the amount of times we've had six resolutions, and I've had the comfort of discomfort, but have the pleasure to absolutely negotiate the difficult issues to make sure they're on the resolutions and they're spoken about. At least twice I've been negotiating. We've had countless events, but the frustration is that the resolutions need to be taken seriously, and Commission needs to implement the strong wording of the resolution, and that is something what we call the other branches of the European Union to look at. Now, my concern, update on the situation, and I tell you now, I had a very difficult conversation yesterday with the Myanmar ambassador, who was at a dinner. We had a dialogue with many of the countries, and I raised the issues with him there, and unfortunately it was defending the indefensible, and there was nothing really that moved forward, but he's doing his job, and I understand his profession. So the EU needs to cooperate with Bangladesh to support long-term inclusive strategy benefiting both host communities and refugees, especially children. The difficulty is Bangladesh has told the UN Security Council that it will stop accepting any more Rohingya Muslims who flee from Myanmar. The row occurs because the latest deal between Bangladesh and Myanmar in January 2018, looking at repatriating Myanmar agreed to accept 1,500 Rohingya each week, and unfortunately not many people have gone back because they just don't feel safe to go back in particular. The EU needs to cooperate and get involved in dialogue with all the neighbouring countries to accept the Rohingya and recognise them as refugees. We can't just leave this to Bangladesh on its own. It's not fair. We've got to have a really serious strategy looking at the solution. The European Union, as Dr. Zani very candidly said with frustration, it needs to do more. It needs to cooperate with Bangladesh to prevent this island, the refugees going to 23,000 refugees going to a remote island, and looking at this, it's going to be difficult to live there, and we have big concern, and so does the UN human rights investigator. So we look at integration is the only option, as refugees will stay there for years to come. As I was there in Cox's Bazar, I met people that were there since the 1990s. So it is a real challenge. So far the response, I need to talk about that. The humanitarian aid, on 15th of Feb, the Commission announced additional 24 million in humanitarian aid for the vulnerable Rohingya refugees. This brings a total assistance in response to the Rohingya crisis since 2017 to 139 million euros. The announcement comes as the UN launches its joint response plan for the Rohingya refugee crisis, which finds 1.2 million people are in need in Cox's Bazar for some support. Sanctions, we have just passed last week the EU Human Rights Mechanism, which is also known as Magnitsky Act. Magnitsky Act, can just about say this, which looks at targeted sanctions for regimes and governments that collude in violating human rights, and not just that, but in other unfriendly nature of work. The targeted measures against officials have been enforced. We have had senior military, border guard and police officials who have been responsible. They've been targeted. They've been put on a list for restrictive measures. Also, the EU has considered trade sanctions, and however Mogherini, our High Representative, is concerned that economic sanctions can also hurt ordinary citizens, and there's also an issue here of crushing the economy with trade sanctions could also allow China to dominate Myanmar. So the EU is looking at that as a leverage. European companies have already cut business with Myanmar. Cartier stopping purchasing gemstones because of abuses against the Rohingya. All these sanctions follow the findings of the independent international fact-finding mission of the UN Human Rights Council and other reports which conclude that gross human rights violations were committed in Rakhine, Kachin and Shan states. We also need to push, and the EU is pushing for resolutions on the UN level, as just mentioned at the start with OIC, and actually referring Myanmar to the International Criminal Court. That is just words so far. We need tougher, concrete action on this issue in particular. And I know Bangladesh can be a party to putting this before the ICC. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't give me any pleasure to be here talking about Myanmar since 2017, and I don't take any pleasure by saying we've had numerous resolutions and I've been negotiating a few of them, because we shouldn't have been in this situation. And what I can say is the European Union parliamentarians, my colleague Mr. Faria MEP, we are determined to do whatever we can. I've just come back from Geneva now, and one of my main focuses on Geneva was raising the Myanmar resolution and making sure that from a parliamentary point of view we have a very strong, profound concern about the welfare and the future of the refugee community. And when we met the UNHCR regional office looking particular at refugees, we talked about the Global Refugee Forum in December, which is different from the Global Pact on Migration. So now we have a Global Pact on Refugees, and people often overlap and confuse themselves over this. I will continue to fight for the rights for the Rohingya community and all other ethnic minorities that are being persecuted. Because like people here in the European Union, people like yourself, Dr. Zani, you mentioned it, you go home to your family, they have a right to live in peace and harmony. Their blood isn't cheaper. Rohingya blood isn't cheaper than European blood, and we've got to speak out for all human rights violations. Again, I must apologise. Normally I'd stay much longer, but as you know, in my country we're going through a little bit of a catastrophe known as Brexit. So I've got to take an urgent conference call from London to see what's going to happen. And I can tell you all now, everybody in the room and watching, is as long as I'm in this Parliament, and I know my friend, I speak for my friend as well, Mr. Faria MEP, is we'll continue to raise the plight for the Rohingya community and all people suffering around the world. And we've been here together numerous times, and we see some familiar faces sometimes. But however small gatherings are, however big, whether it's physical presence or social media presence, we've got to all have a really strong strategy. And you're quite right in frustrations in the speed of how things get achieved. But it gave me great heart to see United Nations, seeing the Myanmar resolution. Again, I mentioned Madam Isma Jahan for her work here. You've been at numerous events. You've from the OIC presence here. You've been one of the most vocal ambassadors on this issue, and the Bangladesh ambassador isn't here. He's also been very responsive to our criticisms at times and our recommendations. And this is what is important, dialogue. And yesterday, a part of me was very uncomfortable to talk about the situation in the Rakhine state and the other states, Kachin as well, with the Myanmar ambassador, but I did it. And we can't always agree on everything, but we should always leave that road for dialogue open. We should always have the opportunity to have dialogue. And I think some of the areas that European Union is pressing hard on will have an impact on the system over there, the governance over there. And I say last word, it is profoundly disappointing. This is my own personal view in relation to State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi in terms of deafening silence on this issue. For me, I was one of those people when she was under house arrest. I was out protesting and marching and campaigning for her release. And I think it hurts me to the core to see somebody who I looked up to as inspiration now, when millions are suffering, to have a deafening silence. Again, thank you very much for having this conference here. We're delighted to co-host it. Dr. Zani, everybody here. I've got to leave, so I apologise in advance. And can I just say, I hope you can all join me in offering good luck to my good friend Jose Faria, who's up for a nomination for his work on public health for the MEP Awards tonight. He truly deserves it. He's a great ambassador for the Parliament. So on that note, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks a lot. Before you go, I have to say a few words also on your behalf, because you deserve it. Madam Ambassador, thanks for being here. Dr. Zani, and all of you have met before, and the newcomers. But I have to say a few words on you. I mean, you are the soul of all of this. You have been so strong in advocating not just the Rohingya issue, but all the ethnic minorities. Whenever I go to one of these, I have to tell you, to confess, whenever I go to one of these meetings, there's always someone there besides me. It's always what you can. He's always there, and that's very it's a good comfort, because I'm from EPP, he's from SND, and we put aside our political differences and we come together in these issues that are so important for us. And I think that represents exactly the core of the European values we defend. Well, he's leaving, but he's coming back, I'm sure.
I don't know whether you're talking about now or Brexit.
I'm talking about Brexit. And I'm sure that he will come because you are very much needed here. It's voices like yours that really give us the strength to fight for what's right. And this is what's right. And so I will ask all of you to give a big applause to Wajid Khan. He really deserves it. Thanks a lot. So, well, I think that my colleague, Mr. Khan, has already said everything. All the facts, the figures, what's at stake. And honestly, there is not much to say, but that Dr. Zani, I do not feel the same. I feel some frustration, yes, but I'm not that critical on Europe, on the European Union. First of all, we're talking about a problem that was not created directly by the European Union. It's a local problem that affects other countries in the region. And honestly, we could just, like for many years happened, just look aside and turn our head to not look at the problem. But we are facing it. We are dealing with it. Now, if you are right on some of the frustration, and I am also frustrated because I would like to see this problem solved for the good of the Rohingya people. We are doing our best here. And there is, I'm not a Muslim, I'm a Christian, so there's a lot of religions here. But I think there's a common value, it's life in all religions. Buddhists also praise the life. And that's our main objective, is to give people the freedom of living the way they believe and in the best way possible. This is the logo of Europe, I think. It's if you have, if you want to say something regarding Europe, you say well-being. Well, not everybody lives well in Europe. We also have problems here, but we try to cope with those differences. We have 28 member states. We are 506 million inhabitants. So different. So many languages. So many identities. So many, but we all come together when there is a common interest. And the ethnic minorities, for us Europeans, are very important. Today I was in another event on the Roma people. I was there. And honestly, I went there to talk about the way forward in order to apply the SDGs on the problem of the Roma, which is very accurate. But I had to leave. Why? Because I represent the EPP, and well, the president of the parliament is Mr. Tajani, is from the EPP, and he was accused of being a Nazist, and because he talked about Mussolini, and because and that was besides the point. We were there to discuss an issue that was very important for the Roma, which is an ethnic minority we have spread around Europe, and it's a bad business for the Roma people, because then we separate. We should be all together in this. So to do much faster. Yes, I agree with you. But problems were not directly created. I did not create a problem down there. It was, there are some of the European society that has directly created. For instance, the sale of arms, the military engagement with the, what do you call it, training. And all of that, yes, we have to stop that. That's what we have to do. But we have to talk about this. And as Wajid Khan said, we have passed 6 resolutions here in these last few years. But this is not enough. I agree with you. That's my frustration. And I can tell you that this frustration is the same I had in other minority that I have tried to defend. Look, I feel frustrated with the situation in Iran. I have been trying to see if we can manage a solution for the Iranian people as a whole, and it's so difficult. I feel frustrated with the situation in Venezuela. I have been fighting to see if we can have an open national dialogue in Venezuela. The frustration with Nicaragua. The frustration with the Rohingyas, because no matter what we do, it's so difficult. I know that even Bangladesh, it's a pity that the ambassador of Bangladesh is not here, because last time I was a bit critical on Bangladesh, and we have to be, but at the same time, it's the same. They are doing, perhaps, I don't know if they are doing the best they can, but they are doing something. They are receiving people there. They could, I mean, they could do like Mr. Orban, just close, you know. We have a problem here in Europe. We have so many problems here within Europe. And that's what we have to overcome. We have to be strong together and criticize them. Yes, we have to, but with a limit, because otherwise people will say, but we are doing what we can, perhaps not enough, and I agree with you, and then we are always being criticized. So what's the point? And a lot of people think that. So, Dr. Zani, what I would ask of you, and I agree with you with the frustration, but seeing that you are here in the European Parliament, you are here in Brussels, you are here in the core of Europe. Why? It's because it matters for you. And you know that some part of the solution comes from here. I'm sorry to say that, but if you come here and you say, oh, the Europeans are like that, and it's because we might say, okay, look, okay, let's put that aside and let's turn to another region of the world where we cannot go that way. We have to deal with everybody and with all the solutions, or with all the problems, in the same state of mind. You see what I mean? So what I'll ask is, bear with me, we are not perfect. We Europeans are very imperfect, but we try to cope together, all of us. It's not easy. It's not easy to be on the same boat. Look, I'm Portuguese. I'm from the other side of Europe. It's not easy for me to understand the way a Hungarian thinks, for instance, because we are different, but we can create solutions. Linger on much, because this is always, it's like the politician. You don't vote, you don't go there, and normally it's people that do not vote that say, you, the politicians, are the worst, the bad guys. But come on, let's be more proactive. Let's put aside our differences. You said very well that you are Buddhist, Muslims, Christians. For me, that's irrelevant. That's not what's at stake. Let's not, and I agree with you, it's not a religious issue, should not be, at least even. We should not even think of that. It's just a question of a situation that is of a genocidal situation, which is proven, as you said, it has been proven by the report on from the United Nations fact-finding mission, and from you guys that come here to this forum and denounce these situations. So we cannot close our eyes, like you also said during the Second World War happened in Europe. Everybody was closing their eyes, and it happened. What happened? We cannot accept that. No matter where, we have to fight this status quo, and for that we have to all be in a cooperative state of mind. And I think that's happening here, but we have to do more. It's not enough to have nice words, moments of silence in Parliament here. I'm totally against minutes of silence, totally against, because that represents very little. You have to act. You have to go there. You have to force the authorities, and you have to make a real embargo on some, as my colleague Wajid Khan said, not a general embargo on Myanmar, because otherwise, as Wajid Khan also said, there is Chinese waiting for an opportunity to move in, and we cannot allow that, because then it will be even worse. I mean, you take, for instance, Tibet. I'm also very involved with the situation of Tibet. We do not want situations like that, so we have to have individual sanctions, stronger individual sanctions, yes, make a sort of a NICA act for Myanmar, but in certain fields, arm embargoes, all the repressive means that can be used. The military training has to stop, and this is a situation that the council and especially commission have to take it on board. We are doing our efforts here in Parliament. I think we have those 6 resolutions, and every resolution is stronger than the previous one, and that's the way it is. We have also to strengthen our cooperation with Bangladesh. I know that the Bangladesh authorities do not want to accept more than the quota they had already received. There is about 1 million Rohingyas in Bangladesh. We have to go there and help. I read last weekend. I read an article, a very interesting article, on the mission to Bangladesh and to the place where there is an island that the Bangladeshi authorities. Yes, and that they want to transfer people there, and there is a big problem because it's not suitable because of the water that comes up and all that. And the region, Cox's Bazar, where they are, used to be a forest, and they were and the very interesting of this article was that there was this gentleman that lived there for quite a few years, a Rohingya, and he said, we have been here, this is the only tree we have, it's the only one that survived, we cannot touch it because it's got something inside. And it was very interesting, it's got something like a holy thing, and we cannot touch, but we need to reforest, we need to bring people back, and we have to think that it might not be possible, and it was very realistic, it might not be possible for us to go back to Myanmar. It might not be possible. And we are accepting that we are going to stay here, stuck here. So, with more cooperation between the European Union with Bangladesh, in order to get a solution of integration, like Wajid Khan said, integration of the Rohingyas within the society of Bangladesh. Later on, we'll see if there is a possibility of banding, but this is the term banding the Myanmar authorities, because the best resource would be for the Rohingyas to go back to Rakhine State, because it is their natural home. But until then, we have to give a good condition of life for those that are unfortunately there, as you said. But this comes from all of us together, and not pointing our fingers at each one. I believe that there has to be a real stronger individual sanctions on the Myanmar authorities, those that are directly implicated in the genocide. The International Criminal Court has to be activated for those that are directly implicated, as you said. Yes, I agree totally with you. We are doing, now and then, me and Wajid Khan, we are writing letters to Mrs. Mogherini, to the Commission, to the various commissioners, not just one of them specifically, in order to try to be a little bit part of the solution. And that's what we are doing. But it is not easy for us. And amongst us here in the European Parliament, we have so many political parties, so many nationalities, so many different ways of seeing, but we need everybody on board. So, but be sure that we here in the European Parliament have taken on board the defense of the Rohingya people, and we are going to stick to it, and we are going to do all our best in order to try to solve this situation.
Thank you very much.
That's important for us. Thank you.
We've got, I think, the former MEP Paulo Cascana might not be here, So I think we are okay with the time, because of that, gave us extra 10-15 minutes. I'll take 30 seconds and I'll hand over to Ne San Nguyen and another Rohingya brother, Tonkin. I think we are not accusing of the European Union of having created the problem, but we are holding the European Union to the standards that have been established by European Union and the United Nations. That standard is the Genocide Convention. We are not simply talking about individual responsibility of the military commanders. We're talking about a member state of the United Nations that has solid ties with the 28 or 27 member country, where a state is found to be in clear violation of an interstate treaty. This is not a common law. This is an interstate treaty that has been signed into a convention by 140 plus member states. And European Union has 28 members. And when European Union accepts the fact-finding mission's findings as Myanmar, having presented the world with very solid evidence of having committed 3 gravest crimes in international law, it is both institutionally and morally imperative for the European Union to say that we cannot carry on business as usual with a member state that is found to be committing 3 gravest crimes in international law. And so what that entails is, at the very least, not just surgical or clinical sanctions, but as a bloc say, we are going to downgrade diplomatic relations. Yeah, we are going to not have any ambassadorial level positions. We are going to recall all military attaches. We are going to activate all the legal, including the Genocide Convention. And so we are here talking about a different level of responsibility, not just a few commanders. We're talking about state responsibility. So if 28 member European Union would basically mount a legal challenge at the International Court of Justice, saying this is a state that has institutionalized this persecution at the level of genocide, irrespective of whether Suu Kyi is in power or other commanders in power. This is going on for 40 years. I think there are things that European Union can still do if it has the will. And as MEP Wajid Khan said, Rohingya blood is no cheaper than European blood. And after all, we are bound by the common humanity that is clustered around the United Nations and its system. So I'll give the floor to Ne San Nguyen and then Tonkin.
Thank you. Honorable MBP host Faria, Ambassador Jahan, Speaker and colleague, good afternoon. First of all, my special thanks to Honorable MVP Wajid Khan and MVP host Faria for hosting this event today. I am going to brief about the situation of Rohingya in Myanmar and Bangladesh. There are at least 250 Rohingya in Maungdaw, Butirong and Ratirong Township who survived the slaughter unleashed in August 2017. All of them except for those Rohingya who live in Butirong and Maungdaw downtown are confined to their villages. They have no livelihood at all. They are dependent on ration distributed by the International Red Cross and the WFP. We know that no ration have been delivered for more than 6 months in some villages, and we are certain people will starve to death. Rohingya fishermen are not allowed to fish. Sometimes fishermen were shot dead by Boragat police in the pretext of the paddy land were confiscated. The farmer who are beaten by local police. There are many types of crime. There are about 130,000 Rohingya in the concentration camp in situations state-sponsored violence against Rohingya erupted in 2012. The government led by Aung San Suu Kyi has been saying that they are implementing Kofi Annan Commission report, but in reality they are trying to put these internally displaced people into permanent camps instead of allowing them to settle back in original places. Life in the IDP camp for Rohingya is far worse than that of criminal prisoner. Prisoners rightly expect to be released at some point to go back to their homeland and carrying on with their life. No such possibility exists for Rohingya in the IDP camp. They face appalling healthcare facility. Rohingya children go malnourished. There is high maternal mortality rate. There is the absence of education and any form of meaningful livelihood. Local immigration and authority are always forcing them to take the national verification card. We know this as genocide card. Rohingya have been rejecting this card since the time it introduced in 2015. What we are demanding is to restore full citizenship that we had before 1982. In this regard, Christine Wagner, the special envoy of the UN Secretary General, does not appear to know the history behind our disenfranchisement. The denial of our citizenship is at the heart of the persecution we face. Yet, Christine Wagner seems to have completely accepted Myanmar's and truth about this card. By accepting Myanmar narrative, she disqualifies her office from bringing about any meaningful change. Rohingya was recognized by the first post-independence government in Burma. When my great-grandfather applied for citizenship in 1949, he received a letter from Minister of Justice saying that he doesn't need to, as he belonged to one of the indigenous ethnic group of Burma. 3 decades later, Rohingya were removed from the ethnic group list with the amendment of the 1982 citizenship law. In recent months, there is fighting between Myanmar military and Rakhine rebel called Arakan Army. We are now very much worried as the fighting has been continuing every day. A few Rohingya have been killed and at least a dozen injured in less a couple of weeks. Yesterday, a Rohingya farmer was killed in Budilong in mortar shelling suspected to be fired by Rakhine rebel. 5 Rohingya, including a child, were injured in a separate fight. Rohingya will flee to Bangladesh if this continues. With regard to the Rohingya refugee in Bangladesh, I express my gratitude to the Bangladesh government and public for sheltering over 1 million Rohingyas. Bangladesh has seen wave of Rohingya exodus since 1978. No country knows better than Bangladesh the insincerity of the Burmese regarding repatriation. No country has accepted the burden of Myanmar genocidal action more than Bangladesh. The multiple round of repatriation, the multiple round of killing, rape and destruction of Rohingya villages. Bangladesh cannot ignore this any longer, nor the absolute necessity for the protection before any further talk about repatriation with Myanmar. Rohingya in Bangladesh camp are refugee and genocide survivor, not infiltrator. It is about time to secure them full refugee right. They cannot simply survive on aid. They are human beings. They need to study and work. Why should education be denied to our young people? Generation of children have missed out on education. It is regarding protection. No, Myanmar is offering citizenship or permitting them to settle back in their original villages. Instead, Myanmar is constructing barbed wire surrounded Many women and children were gang raped and almost 400 villages were burned to the ground. The cruelty and genocidal act of Myanmar army known as Tamador and the so-called civilian government in Myanmar led by Aung San Suu Kyi have been exposed by the report of independent fact-finding mission last September. The entire world witnessed it. Yet there is inaction of government across the world. We are puzzled by the insufficient sanction imposed by the US, Canada, and European Union. These are not commensurate with the great crime committed by Myanmar. Inaction prevail over 140 countries, all signatory of the Genocide Convention. They have not acted. There is inaction at the UN Security Council. Not only has it not acted, it is paralyzed. We are here today to urge European Union to act. Boycott Myanmar by all possible means. We are the victim and genocide survivor of a 4-decade-long genocide. We need your genuine solidarity. Your support can end this genocide. Thank you.
Dr. Zani, I will have to leave for 5 minutes. I have a European network against racism. I have to be there just to say hi. I have to do that. I have to be at the World Down Syndrome Day. It's also a cause that and the Iranian, there is also, but I will be back in 10 minutes. I'll run, but this is my main event. This is my main event. But can you lead this? You are leading perfectly. So we trust you. And thanks for your book. I'm going to leave it here because that will make me come back. Thank you. Just bear for me 10 minutes, okay? Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Sure. Even though Wajid cannot hear, Honorable MEP and Jules Inasia Faria is leaving, I would like to express many thanks to them for hosting us, and thank you very much for joining here, Vice Ambassador to EU, Ms. Jahan. Really appreciate to join here, and I would like to express many thanks to you all. And actually, I'm a Rohingya. I left when I was about 17 years from our country state, and you know, today I'm speaking here as a genocide survivor. You know, actually, my own family in 1978 were among you know, hundreds of thousands of refugees who were temporarily forced to flee to Bangladesh in 1978. They were returned back in 1980s, and after that, 1982, citizenship was introduced citizenship law was introduced in Burma. Actually, my grandfather was a member of parliament. My father served government service more than 20 years, but I was not recognized as a citizen. You know, this genocide, what we can see here is not going on today, it's going for many decades. When we look back history of the Rohingya, we've been recognized as an ethnic Rohingya language broadcasted in Burma 2 times a week, and also our citizenship been taken away. They impose, it is a kind of systematically how the government doing it for many years. We have to look back there. We have to see how firstly, they strip off our ethnic rights and then citizenship rights. After that, when I was in Arkan state, for example, I have seen many Rohingyas and who are same age with me, that we couldn't go to the university, and I have seen like my elder brothers, friends, they couldn't get married because they need to get marriage permission. It took like 2 years, and land been confiscated, including my relatives and my father's land. You know, that is how they've been systematically trying stage by stage. You know, so what we have seen is European Union here. They looking at 2010 is a kind of full reform in Burma, so-called, I should say, so-called reform. When this so-called reform came, it's not a kind of constitutional change in Burma came. In military, with you know, military-backed government came with a public uniform, and when they came into the power, we have seen that anti-Rohingya speech, anti-Rohingya campaign, anti-Muslim and other minorities been suffering in Burma. Even though we have seen European Union, they visited many times. You know, they have seen Naypyidaw Yangon a lot of changes, so-called freedom, media freedom and something like that. But what happening in our other sides of our Burma? Kashmir state, Shan state, Rohingyas in Rakhine state, and now look at Rakhine, our Rakhine brothers and sisters, what the situation they are facing. So on that period, what we have seen is a kind of international, support, and even it is surprising ICG was recognizing the military criminal thing, saying was a kind of nominating for Peace Prize. So this is totally encouraging and disturbing as a Rohingya myself and other fellows of Burma. That's the way move it on. And why we are at this stage today, when we look at that international community and particularly European Union, we appreciate their concern, but they didn't take practical action for many things. And if you look at European Union 2011 resolutions, council resolution, what they put up there is like, there is no such, there is no way to, to lift any sanctions in Burma unless Rohingya situation change and their rights will restore. That is what in 2011, European Union resolution. And if you look at 2012, they lifted up sanctions when Aung San Suu Kyi came here, and then on that time Rohingya 140,000 are IDPs. They lifted up. Instead, forget about situation what they improved, and situation get much worse, and people are 140,000 IDPs and not allowed to go to the even market in Sitwe and not allowed to go to the hospital. That is the situation until today, since that time. So that is the way how we come here, because there's one point I want to point out is international community, there is a kind of so much of support on so-called reform. Instead, they didn't look at what's happening to the minorities, particularly the Rohingya people. Now, what we can see the last stage, since Aung San Suu Kyi came to power, she is not even, she is not even using the word Rohingya. She is proactive and protecting military. From her office, we need to look at 2016 in November, December, her state consular office put in a fake news. This is how this Aung San Suu Kyi, and not only military, we need to look at. Aung San Suu Kyi herself complicit in this genocide. That is how we came here in this stage today. And she doesn't know why these people are fleeing. And when thousands of our sisters been raped, gang raped, and international media, international community have well documented, and she is saying she does not believe this has happened, military have done. So this is how we came through here, because international community had far as what we can see, Security Council sat down for I think more than 5 times. There is no such action we have not seen at all, even not a resolution, Security Council. And we have to look at European, the fact-finding mission, UN fact-finding mission set up and brief in UN Security Council 25th October 2018 that genocide is ongoing. Until today, genocide is ongoing against Rohingya in Burma. But European Union have not done to sanction military commander-in-chief Min Aung Hlaing. Still he is not on sanction list, unfortunately. This is really encouraging. Day by day, Rohingya genocide against Rohingya increasing in Burma. This is first point I want to mention. So they can go away with these murders, what is happening in Burma. They can go along with that because nobody is talking about him and other military being they put individual. So my point here is European Union, what they have to come up with a stronger action. Never again should not be meaningless. European Union firstly must sanction military Min Aung Hlaing, who masterminded this genocide in mass killing of 2017 August. He mentioned with his own words to the Washington Post, this is unfinished business of 1942. How come European Union has still not sanctioned him until today? This is one of the key things. Secondly, European Union must support ICC referral to Burma and other options. That is very important. Also, military institutions are still spreading hate speech. This institution should be punished and stop, stop banning this institution to enter to EU and other countries. And also must stop investing in Myanmar. That is also important. And EU must set a policy based on the ground reality, not on past fall assumptions from Suu Kyi and others what's given to EU. One thing we are Rohingya. We want to request EU to refer to the Rohingya as Rohingya when they're talking about them. This is very important. EU must enact a visa ban on all members of military. This is very important. EU must ban the supply of any kind of military equipment. EU must provide empowering Rohingya young leadership in camps, because as we are genocide survivors, many survivors in the camps, their 60% are children. So when we talking about this genocide, one side we must pressure to bring them justice, these who are responsible, and at the same time we must look at how we can counteract to develop this community. This is very important. Otherwise, in 10-15 years, Rohingya young generation will be in danger. This is one point I want to point out. And lastly, it is important there must be, the military, whoever the list, is not only that a few, and much more there is investigation needed. And I think when we talk about sanction, top from military to all the institutions, that is very important. They are, until today, spreading hate speech. Thank you, I stop here.
Thank you. We're going to need to take